Hey everybody, JJ here, back again with another Wednesday of Zoom networking. Our guest speaker today is an absolutely amazing young lady. I've had the pleasure to meet her in person here in Southern California. She's got the $1 million smile. You'll see her in any room you go into. Like most of us, started out at one point in time learning the real estate business, became an entrepreneur, now a very successful, recognized, respected, and esteemed real estate investor in Southern California area, my good friend, Sonia Ramirez. Sonia, how are you?
I'm doing great, JJ. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. You kidding? You've in a short time become one of my favorite people. It's your personality, your friendliness, and that $1 million smile. So let me ask you, and I know the answer to this question, but for those that don't know you, where in the country are you located?
So I'm in sunny Southern California, and most of my deals that I do are in the city of Los Angeles in particular, but born and raised in Anaheim in California. I mean, in Orange County.
There you go. Go Angels.
Yeah, I know.
Go Angels, yeah. So your topic today is identifying highest and best use on any project. And we've got new investors on the call, experienced investors on the call, people watching on YouTube weeks and months down the line. But let me ask you, what does one mean when one makes the statement highest and best use on a project? What does that mean for the new real estate investor?
So what that should mean to you is that you look at a project with eyes that see more than one exit, right? So Pace and the community for the sub two always talks about creative financing. When you're talking highest and best use, you need to think about creative exits. And that's how I want you to remember it, is that there's always plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D to exit a property creatively and force the appreciation and the value as high as you can. So that's when we talk about highest and best use of any project. It's kind of seeing it with different eyes. And until you have the knowledge to know what you're looking at, then, you don't know that you can force it higher with highest and best. So that's what we're going to talk about.
And of course, the more experience one has, the more one can, I use the phrase sometimes, see the forest through the trees and see what all the possible paths can be. Um, Is it best when evaluating a property to have more than one exit strategy, or is it sufficient to have only one exit strategy?
I think it's always best to see that you have different options because that's how you hedge against losing money. That's how you hedge against bad investments. And I always say that you don't lose money, right? JJ, like you don't lose money. That is the cost of your lesson when you make a mistake and you stumble. Right. So if you didn't make what you were supposed to, or you lost money on something, that was just the cost of your lesson. But what we're trying to avoid with highest and best use is that maybe you didn't have to do that. Maybe you didn't have to misstep. Maybe there was a plan B or plan C that you didn't think of. And if there is, then there's a way to still salvage some of these deals. So you should always look at more than one option because, again, you're hedging your bets against an uncertain market and sometimes.
So, is there any specific way one identifies, and maybe let me shift that or wrap that around like a taco for a minute. Um, Real estate's not a business we can do by ourselves. We need to work with other people, rely upon other people, and learn from other people. Are we doing that, working with others when we're identifying a highest and best use, or is this something we kind of just have to learn on our own?
I think it's a combination, right? I mean, ultimately, it's our responsibility to take ownership of our knowledge, right? And where we get our knowledge from. And you've talked about this in the group, right? Where you're connecting with other people. But what I like to say is that the algorithm will pick you up, right? And so the more you're searching for different creative strategies or Airbnbs or midterms, anything that you start thinking of, multi-units, you saw something that sparked something and then you start searching it. When you start searching it, the algorithm starts populating those things for you, right? So they start showing you more and more of what you're searching for. So make sure that you're searching for things that you're looking for knowledge base on. So that's our responsibility. Now, the other part of it is the networking part and the connecting. I've made it part of my brand and part of my business model to network at least once a week in either a virtual platform like this or in a live event, right? And because I understand that Doesn't make a difference all the knowledge that I have in my head, that if I don't have people to connect with and people to do deals with and people to move money with, then it makes no difference at the end of the day. I cannot be successful alone, right? And you can't be uber successful. You can be
Mhm.
successful. I'm not going to say you can't. People in silos definitely can be successful, but you know, the reality is if you want to scale and you want to really go big, you're going to need more people around you.
And there's a couple common phrases I hear. You got to be in the right room with the right people, surround yourself with the right people. So, as you say, it's important to get out there and network to some extent, in addition to the regular duties and things that we have to do to make sure our business works. So, jump right on in. Let me let you just kind of run with it. Where do you want to start with identifying highest and best use in any project?
All right. Well, yeah, let's jump in on that. So highest and best use, again, when you're looking at something, what I want you to look at is what else can be done with a property. At least in our Southern California market and more expensive markets like the way that we have here, you need to be able to do what it's called force appreciation, right? A simple flip usually is not going to give you the kind of profit margin that you're looking for in a business model, right? You did all this work and you made $5,000. That's great when you're just starting off because you learned something. But the reality of it is that if you could have added an accessory dwelling unit, if you could have got it entitled, if you could have knocked it down and did multi-units, if you could have done midterm renters, if all these different options, if you could have done that, you could have easily double, tripled, 5 times your
Mhm.
exit profit, right? So that becomes paramount in when you're evaluating a property to say what else you need to ask yourself, what else can be done with this project. And that starts by first looking at the property, looking at the zoning of the lot. And then once you start delving into zoning and what actually can be put on there, then you can start seeing multiple exits at that point, right? So when you're doing that, there's lots of free resources. You don't have to be a realtor. You don't have to, it's great if you have a realtor on your team or somebody that you can call on. Again, this is back to networking, right? Saying, hey, I think I might have something. Can you look it up for me? Right. So when you're looking at something, no matter what city or state that you're in or county, every county and every city has an interactive zoning map, right? So if you're like City of Carson, let me look up City of Carson zoning map, right? And you can put in your addresses in there and start getting a feel for what can be done there, right? I actually did this. I did a webinar for Knoxville, Tennessee, and I did maybe 2 hours of research the night before the webinar, and I was able to identify highest and best use and the areas for development within that city. And I've never visited, right? So it's it's one of those things where they were like, how did you find that out? And I'm like, it's all free. It's on that Google machine that's in your hand, right? It's
Wow.
so yeah, that's where you need to start. You need to start at looking at the property with different eyes and just saying what else can be done, right? When you start asking that question, then you can start doing some due diligence to find out what can be done, right? And like I said, the first thing that you look at is zoning. If it's an R1, most cities with R1 means residential one, means you can only build one unit, right? Then you start seeing R2, R3, you start seeing different zoning codes for different cities mean different things, right? For City of LA, I know it like the back of my hand, so I can recite all of them to you. But what I want you to understand is that all of those development standards mean something different. So again, if you find out what the zoning is, then you go, okay, let me Google that zoning for that city and then see what can be done. Like I said, City of LA and R2 means you can put 2 units on a property, right? And it can be almost any size. But if you look at like Inland Empire, right, which has much bigger lots, even if it's an R2, it says that you have to do 1 acre per property, per house, right? So then you're going to need a minimum of a 2 acre lot. So those are some examples when in LA, I need a 5,000 square foot lot. In Inland Empire, I need a 2 acre lot, right? So development standards are vastly different depending on where you are in the country and depending on where you are in Southern California. So I would encourage everybody to start there and start becoming familiar with that language of first, let me see what can be done. Okay. So that's first and foremost. Your second option, if you're like, hey, I don't care what can be built on this, I just want to see if I can force the value on what's existing. So with California, there's accessory dwelling units, there's ADU laws that have gone into effect that are very development friendly because they're statewide. And then I think that's a national trend. You're going to start seeing these kind of units that are going to be pushed in different parts of this country. Austin, Texas already has it. Seattle already has it. They had it way before we did. So it's definitely a trend that you're starting to see because intergenerational families are starting to live together, and we still have a housing shortage. So most places are still looking to build more housing in a way that makes sense. But I think in most of the other part of the country that's not on the coast, you're really looking at intergenerational families more than anything. So when you're looking at highest and best use for that particular property, you're going, what can I do to add value here? So a simple rehab will add value for sure. If within the square footage that's there, if you can reconfigure it so that it's a better layout, that's going to add value without adding a ton of cost, right? Then you're looking at detached garages, you're looking at existing structures, and can you convert those to living spaces legally, right? And now in California, the ADU law says as of January 1st of this year that an illegal structure, what used to be like illegal granny flats or illegal converted garages, can now be legalized. So before they used to say you had to knock them down, right? And you had to start from scratch. You had to start back up again. Now they're saying, okay, we're going to let you keep them. You may have to open some walls and, we are going to do rough plumbing and rough electrical, and we're still going to go and you have to pull permits and everything, but you can now legalize them. So again, these are opportunities, guys, for us as investors. These are just opportunities. Now, when somebody says, oh, it has an illegal garage, you're like, okay, I can do something with that, right? Because an illegal garage conversion, because now I can legalize it with minimum amount of money as opposed to a ground up new construction and force the value that way. Now, when you're talking about highest and best use, not every neighborhood should get ADUs unless you're holding them. Okay, so let me explain that real quick, JJ. So you have Class A, Class B, and Class C neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
You've heard those terms before,
Yeah,
right?
yes.
And
Class A being the best.
Yes, Class A being the best. There is Class D, but we don't talk about Class D, right? So Class A, for reference point, everybody has kind of the reference point in Los Angeles, kind of like your Beverly Hills, right? It's super affluent, South Orange County, Costa de Casa, like you have your Class A neighborhoods, Newport Beach, those kind of things, right? Then you have your Class B neighborhoods, which usually are just in proximity right outside of that, right? So your mid-level, yeah, Miguel, and your mid-level kind of white collar, mix of blue collar in that neighborhood in your B, that would kind of be like Culver City, I would say. That's your B. That's a pretty good example. Highland Park, that's a B, right? Then you have an Echo Park and Silver Lake now. Those are Bs, right? And then you have your C neighborhood, which is a little bit lower income than that, right? So you have lower income in your C neighborhoods, but you also have working families still. There's still a lot of movement in it, and it's usually very densely populated, right? So the sweet spot that you want is definitely in that C on the brink of B neighborhood. So why you want that, and I see Miguel, we'll talk about that in the chat real quick, Miguel. So why you want C that borders B is that you have proximity, right? So I can buy a property in mid-city LA for maybe 100,000 to 200,000 less than I can in Culver City, even though it's right next door and literally separated by a couple of blocks, right? But the rents that I can charge are just as high or very, very close to Culver City, to a B neighborhood, because it's on the outskirts. So proximity is close enough, but you're picking up a property for much less. Wow. So that is the sweet spot when it comes to highest and best, especially for developers. But I would say for anybody who's looking to flip or to hold, that's where you want, because eventually B neighborhoods or C neighborhoods, especially that are on the cusp, become B neighborhoods,
Yeah.
and everything starts expanding, right? So A neighborhoods expand, then B's, and then C's. So everything expands. One of the best areas that I like to buy is just south of downtown LA, 90011. Do you know why, JJ?
Well, just like you said, the area is expanding and growing. They've now, completely redone Staples Centers is now Crypto Arena, and USC is south of downtown LA, and
Right.
they're growing and developing. So as those areas build, they're going to go into not as good areas, and then those will become better areas. So yeah, it's
Exactly.
kind of exactly what you're saying.
Exactly. And when you look at what's happened just in the last 5 to 8 years, right? I mean, Inglewood is a great example of what happened in Inglewood. It just shot up. It went like double the pricing in the last 5 years, right? But when you look at downtown LA, if you think of downtown LA as kind of the nucleus, right? And you go west of downtown, that is super overpriced already. Anything west side is like, you're going to go low cap rate, high appreciation. This is where we're talking about this, Miguel. And then if you go north, north is already starting to pop. So you saw Elysian Park, you saw Highland Park, you saw Silver Lake, Echo Park, all of those already went super high. There's still some pockets that you can start picking up, like North Hollywood, right? If you go east of downtown LA is actually a lot of county and a lot of hillside. County and hillside are much less desirable and much more costly to build on, right? Or to flip on because you have a lot of issues structurally, right? So east is kind of, you're starting to see some of the movement, but you're not seeing a ton of it like you are south. So really the only movement that can happen aggressively is south of downtown,
Hmm.
right? And like you said, USC, you have a very robust rental market there because you have students, you have again Airbnbers, you have all of this kind of thing, even midterm renters. You have a very, very robust rental market there, and so that's just going to keep going south. So that's the reason I like right below south,
It
right
makes
south.
perfect
So,
sense.
yeah. And so to kind of answer what Miguel is saying in the chat, he's saying lower cap rate. So cap rate is your capitalization rate for, and we got to do a little vocabulary because I know we have some new investors in here, right? So when you talk about cap rate is your capitalization rate, every area has a different cap rate. Again, super easy to find it. Go on Google, cap rate for such a zip code. The ones that I build on, I know by memory, obviously, but the ones that you're looking at you want to Google it, right? A good resource, a free resource is if you go on Crexy or you go on LoopNet, which does cap rates for multi-units, like big multi-unit apartments, those kind of things. You'll kind of start seeing what the cap rate is across the board in different areas. And again, you can do this anywhere in the country, not just here, and find that. But it's an inverse relationship. If you're looking at a Class A neighborhood, your cap rate is going to be much smaller. It's going to be a 2 or 3%, but inversely, the appreciation of that property goes up higher. So it loses less value over time, right? And again, if we take Beverly Hills in the crash in 2008, it definitely crashed, but it didn't crash like you did out in, Palm Desert, right? Which is way out in the desert. So the appreciation is higher, but your cap rate is smaller. So you're going to have less cash flow, but you're going to have a more valuable property. Inversely, in a C property, you're going to have a higher cap rate, right? But your value is going to be lower. And this is why in the Midwest, you see a lot of things that are like 10, 12, 15% cap rate. Well, yeah, that's because the value is all the way down here in the property. There's the other part of it, right? So you have higher cash flow, but you're going to have to hold that asset for a lot longer to see the appreciation move up. So our sweet spot as developers is to where do I force the appreciation up and I have a pretty good cap rate. And that's where that C on the cusp of B neighborhoods, that's where that comes in. That's why that makes the most sense because again, I bought a property under 500,000, but I can build on it and now make it worth 1.5 million. I have now got a great cap rate and I've gotten my appreciation up. So those two things normally are inverse. And the goal for a developer is to try to get those in line and force them up.
So it's not just one versus the other, it's a combination of the two.
Right. Because again, if you're looking at a 2 or 3% cap rate, which is very, very a good cap rate in Beverly Hills, right? A 2 or 3 is actually really good. Then you're going, okay, this is a long-term hold because my value is going to keep going up.
And that makes sense for a better neighborhood. I
Right.
mean,
Now, if you got a 2 or 3 in a bad neighborhood, that is not a good deal. Run. Okay. So yeah, unless you're going to get a killer deal on it. So if you're going to obviously get it in a very, very good price and you're able to somehow force that appreciation either by increasing rents, by again knocking it down, there's got to be a way to increase it. But if it's currently at a 2 or 3% cap rate and it's not appreciating, it's not a good deal.
Sonia, it looks like we have a couple questions here from the group. Let's bring somebody on. Peter Yim, you are on with Sonia. What is your question?
Hi, Sonia.
Hey, Peter.
Um, I believe it's called SB9. Is that correct? Where you can subdivide a lot and sell? And I was just wondering what would be your strategy if there's a lot. Like I just want to see an example. What would you do with a lot that's it's subdividable and you can sell that lot?
So there's a couple limitations with SB9. So let's let everybody know what it is, right? SB9 is a state law for state of California that says that there's 2 things that you can do with SB9. You can do existing property and make it into a duplex. So you can actually do 2 legal units on one lot, and you can use SB9 to do that. Or you can split the lot if it's big enough, and then you can do 2 non-conforming lots and build on each lot by right. Okay. So there's 2 different aspects of SB9. Now, depending on the city and the county that you're in, there will be different limitations to what SB9 can do. I can't buy 3 lots next to each other and split all of them through SB9. They're trying to avoid developers doing that and just buying up a bunch of this block and then splitting it, right? So a lot of counties and cities will require that it's owner occupied. And if it's owner occupied, it can't be under an LLC. It has to be under your name, right? And if it's under your name, the intention has to be that you will live there for the next 3 years, right? So again, nobody's checking and knocking on your door in year 3 and saying, do you still live here, right? But again, they're trying to put things in place to say, hey, we want to discourage big developers from coming in and doing this, but we want to have a path for homeowners to be able to acquire generational wealth, right? I mean, really, if I have the property next to me and I'm able to develop that because I split it and now I have a rental, right? Or I sold that to my kid, or, I sold it to a family member, you're creating wealth within the community, right? And I think that was the goal of SB9 originally, was to have a path for kind of the homeowner to be able to do something. So at this point, SB9 is, if you lot split it, you can do anything that's by right. So let's say it's an R2 lot. If you were able to split it, that means that you could do a duplex on each. And not only can you do a duplex on each, you can also do an ADU on that duplex if there's enough lot size, right? So now you're looking at a single family home that if you lot split it, you're able to do 6 units. You're doing a soft 6plex, technically, right? You're doing 2 duplexes and 2 ADUs off in 2 lots, right? So if it's an R1, residential 1, just single family home, and you lot split it, then again, how do you force it? How do you do highest and best? You do a single family home, you do a JADU, a junior ADU, and you do an ADU. So now, in essence, you're going 3 and 3 again, right? So there's lots of opportunities with lot splits, but you have to check the city and the county to make sure what the requirements is for owner occupancy. So that's the biggest hurdle for SB9. It's great. And I've seen some really creative ways to use it in like Long Beach. Long Beach is super good for these because their development standards are like, go build as much as you can. So that's a great city to do that in. And again, I could take a lot that's, let's say, 7,000 square feet, and it has a small 1,300 square foot house for that example, right? And say, with SB9, I'm going to do a legal second unit. So it's a legal duplex, and I'm going to add an ADU, and I'm going to hold that, right? And now with the creation also of the possibility that you're going to be able to sell ADUs separately from the main house, which I don't know if everybody knew that, but that went into effect January 1st of this year. City and counties have to, they have to opt in for this, but you're going to be able to sell your ADU separately. You basically have to create an HOA and it becomes a condo project at that point, in essence, right?
Wow.
Yeah. And so, I mean, with San Diego, that is allowing like 8 freaking ADUs in the backyard, right? That is a major cash cow to be able to sell each one of those off like a condo, right? So there, again, opportunity, guys, opportunity. So SB9, the biggest thing is, yes, definitely look into it. I've seen the lot splits be successful. Certain cities and counties are more, like I said, development friendly for that. Some of them have no idea what they're doing yet, and they go SB9. I have no idea. That's the only time when I when I'm not against the city, but when I do everything by right, like you tell me what I can build on it, I'm going to build on it. I'm not going to ask for a variance. I'm not going to ask to rezone anything. That takes too much time. But with things like that are statewide, you do want to push it, right? If a city says, oh, we don't have the development standards yet, they're supposed to default to the state standards. So you do want to push the envelope on there and say, well, then use the state standards, right? Because you have the right to build that. And so you don't want to, just take what the city is saying, like, oh, we're not ready for it yet. Well, no, it's time to get ready because I'm ready to do my project, right?
Wow.
So you do want to push in that sense.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Did that answer
Got
your
a
question?
Yeah, you did. That was
Okay.
more than I asked, but yeah,
All
that
right.
was great. I had a quick question. So for this purpose of this example, like Long Beach, seems like you know a little bit of there. Like
Mhm.
then, so is when you're splitting the lot, is it an entitlement that you're doing for that lot? Is that correct? To
Well,
split
you
it?
can do a couple of things. You can just split it, right? And sell the lot as land, right?
Uh-huh.
If you entitle it, that means that you're going to actually put in your permits and your plans and get it all the way to what's called RTI, ready to issue, right? So if you sell, and again, this is 2 different strategies here, right? You can go, I'm just going to split it. I'm just going to sell the lot as land. Somebody else can deal with building it, right? You can split it. You can entitle it. So you can build whatever by right with the permits, right? You can get it all through the process, through the city, and get it ready to issue. And then you can sell that project as an entitled project. So somebody is shovel ready. They can start right away on the project. And that's value because that's time. That's time and energy to somebody who wants to develop it, right? Or the third exit there is you actually build it and you hold it, right? So you build it, and then there's other options there. You either hold it, you rent it, you sell it at that point, right? So there's all 3 things that you can do after you split it.
Oh, wow. Wow. That was great information, Sonia. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Peter.
Peter, thank you so much. Peter's always got great questions. Thank you so much, Peter.
Hi, yes. Can you explain why lot size is important in a well-zoned area?
Yes. So lot size determines almost everything that you can do there, right? So lot size and zoning go hand in hand. So like I was giving you that example of what happens in the Inland Empire, right? So if they said, you need 1 acre per single family dwelling, then you know that if you get something that's less than an acre, you're not going to be able to build that there, right? So then when you start looking, you go, okay, if the plan is to subdivide and the plan is to try to build it out somehow, you know that you need to at least look for more than 2 acres to do something. So that's your lot size, right? With the development standards. When it comes to City of LA, normally like what I do is I don't look for anything less than 5,000 square feet, sometimes 4,800 square feet. And that's just because we have narrow properties. So for City of LA, the frontage needs to be at least 40 feet across. And 40 feet by however deep it is, if you think about this logically, this is why this makes sense, right? I need 10 feet for my driveway. I need a 5-foot setback or from the property line. That means that my property is only going to be, like 25 feet wide then. So if I thought I could build 10 units there, I have to think about how high I have to go then because it's such a small lot. So even though by right, sometimes you can build 10, 15, 20, you guys get those all the time, right? Where somebody's like, you can build 30 units on this. And I'm like, it's a 4,000 square foot lot. No, I can't. I mean, technically, yes, I can, right? But does it make sense? Is that my highest and best use for that property? Probably not. If I can build a duplex on it and sell it quickly and get what I need out of it, then why wouldn't I do that? Even though by right, I can build more. But that's why lot size is important because it's tied to your development standards for your zoning. So you need to know what the minimum is. Like I said, Santa Ana's 10,000 square feet is like your minimum that you need. So when you look at something that's smaller, it may not work for that kind of exit.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you for your question. Philip, you are on with Sonia. What's your question?
Did you state how we find the difference of A, B, or C neighborhoods?
No, I didn't actually, but that's
Is
a
that
great
like a
question.
standard or?
Well, part of it is if you're astro flipping, obviously you don't know that, right? You're kind of going on somewhere that's in a different area than where you're at, right? But if you're in the area locally, then you have some kind of local knowledge of what an A, B, and C neighborhood is. If you're going outside of that, again, Google's your best friend, guys. You go in and you look at like the median value of the homes and you look at the median income of the location, right? And this is going to vary vastly, obviously, in middle of the country as it is on your coast, right? But if the median income in a pocket is over 100,000 and everywhere else is 20,000 for that area, then you understand where the A neighborhood is, right?
Okay.
And then when you do any kind of comps, you pull any kind of properties in that zip code, you know, again, something middle of the country that's worth 130,000, but everything normally sells for 30,000, then you know that that's a Class A neighborhood. So then you start, again, just kind of going out from there, radiating out of where's your B and where's your C.
Okay, thank you.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, that I was just I think I hopped out real quick and then came back and was like A, B, and C, and then Miguel seems to know it. I'm gonna give him a call.
Yeah, yeah. And that's a great one. No, it's a great question because I didn't go into how do you identify those things. So great question, Phil.
Thank you.
Philip, thank you for joining us, and definitely grab Miguel's phone number there. Hey, on that same note, so let me ask a question. When you have various neighborhoods of A, B, and C, is a zip code like, would the whole zip code be a particular area, or could one zip code be like part of them is an A and part of them is a B? Or are they indeed this zip code is area C, this one is B, this one is A? Is there any flexibility in there?
Yeah, most of the time most of the zip code is gonna be in one neighborhood. Again, what you want is to identify those overlapping areas, right?
Mhm.
Where it's almost B, it's almost C. But most of the time in general, just as kind of a general rule, your whole zip code is more than likely going to be one class,
Okay.
A, B, right? And again, I take South LA, right? When I look at 9111, I like to buy anything that's in the 40s or below. So 40th Street, 39, 38, anything in the 40s below is closer to downtown. Anything on the 40s and above is closer to South Central, right? And so there's a distinction for me as a developer, but really my rents don't differ that much, right? Same zip code, it's closer to the C neighborhood as it is to a B neighborhood, right? So there is different sides to a zip code, and that's useful to know. But I mean, if you pull your comps and you're within a mile and you see all the stuff is pretty much the same, then there's probably not that big of a difference.
Okay, fair enough. So Thea, you are on
there
with
she
Sonia.
is.
What's your question?
So Thea is a great investor, by the way. So
I love you, Sonia. So yeah, my question is, and I think it's also just kind of for other people on the call to hear too, is like using your 90011 zip code, what is the buying criteria that you look for? You talked about 4,800 to 5,000, but kind of like what's the best criteria that you could be looking for to develop what it is that you typically like to develop? Can you talk about that?
sure. So we're going to take 90011 as a case study, right? I'm looking for 4 units and below what I can build there. So by right, I need it to be an R2, R3, R4, LARD 1.5, LARD 2, or LARD 3. I need it to be 4,800 square feet minimum. all the way up to, you know, obviously the bigger the better for those lots. I'm also looking at LAC 2 and LAC 4. LA Commercial 2 and LA Commercial 4 can be inversely R3s and R4s. So commercial lots like that, I can turn into residential by right. So those are what I'm looking for. And I'm looking for, again, value is inherent to what I can do with it, right? So I just paid $580,000 for a lot that I can build 4 units plus an ADU, right? So I'm willing to pay that much. But I also just paid $460 for a lot in South LA because I can only build a duplex, right? I'm looking at the chat. If something is LAR, that's city. If you see something that's LCR, that's county. That's LA County. So LCR 32OU, I'd have to look it up again because I'm not as well versed for county as I am for city. But it is multi-unit for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of my sweet spot, right? Is normally under 600,000 for 5,000 square feet or bigger. Under 6,000 if I'm looking for a fourplex, under 500,000 if I'm only looking at a duplex.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So, Sophia, thank you for your question. Great question, and pleasure to have you on the call today. Miguel Swift, you're on with Sonia Ramirez. What's your question?
I just want to say this is some fire stuff you putting out here, Sonia. So thanks for this. Seriously. Secondly, I want to piggyback off of Sophia's because that was a great question she posed right there. As far as like what you're looking for a lot wise, I am kind of asking because I know I brought this to you on Facebook before, about like the build criteria. Like, how do you build? Like, what do your numbers look like when you build? Because I know, like, when I look for properties, I may or may not use like a per square foot, like price per square foot method. You know what I mean? Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, or it could differ. You know what I mean? Depending on different areas you're at. So do you use that and all when you're kind of thinking about like, okay, how much can I can I build a 2-unit and for how much? And does it differ from this area as opposed to, you know, up the street or maybe like in the next zip code or you know what I mean? Like how does that kind of work and how do you come up with like those numbers as far as that?
No, great question. Are you ready to take notes? Does everybody have a pen and paper out? All right. Because I'm not putting this up. I'm not sharing my screen right now. So I'm gonna give you guys the formula. I reverse engineer it, and this is what most developers do, is that they reverse engineer their numbers and then they back up into that with their acquisitions, right? And so I'm gonna give you guys the formula. So here's the formula.
Okay.
First thing you need to see is by right, what can you build there, right?
Yeah.
So can I build a duplex, triplex, fourplex?
Mhm.
How big am I going to build those? Most of the time for me, it's 4 bedrooms, 4 or 5
Mhm.
bedrooms. I'm going to maximize the amount that I can do. Why?
That's per unit that you're talking
Per
about?
unit.
Wow. Okay.
Now,
Nice.
why do I do that? Because I can charge more rent. Okay. So in
Sure.
South LA, for a 4-bedroom, I can charge 4,500.
Mhm.
Right. So this is the reason that we maximize the build. Right. So I'm going to take my pro forma, my estimated rents. And now this is what is very important, is that you don't overestimate. I'm always super conservative in my numbers. Right.
Sure.
So if I saw comps for 5,000, for 5,200 for rents, and then I saw some 3,500, some 3,700, I'm going to take the average. I am not going to take the highest and I'm not going to take the lowest, right?
Split the difference. Yeah.
I'm going to split the difference. I'm definitely there's enough comps for rentals in our area that you guys should be able to find with no problem rental comps, right? And I like using hot pads. I like using Facebook Marketplace. Actually, I love using Facebook Marketplace for rentals. So I'm going to take the average, right? And Miguel, do you have a calculator out?
I do. Sure
Hold on,
do.
I'll do it
Let's
with mine
get to it.
too.
I'm a number dude. Let's get to it. Come on.
I know, right? So this is where we're going to geek out with numbers, guys. All right.
Yeah,
So
let's do it.
let's say 4,500, and we're going to take the example that I did with the 4 units, right?
Sure.
So 4,500 times 4 units,
Okay.
that's
18,000.
$18,000 a month, right? For 4 units. So
Sure.
18,000 is what I can gross. Now I'm going to do that times 12 months because that's 1 year, right?
216,000.
216,000. That's
Gross.
your gross,
Yeah.
right? Now, new construction, I'm going to make sure that the tenants are paying for their own gas, their own electrical, their own water, right? I'm going to put in all their own meters. So my expenses are going to be less than if I was taking over a project where I had to pay a bunch of those things, right?
Sure.
So for insurance, for maintenance, for just general upkeep, I'm going to take 25% off of that.
All right.
for
Does that
expenses.
include like taxes and you know what I mean? And
That's what I'm
stuff
saying.
like
That's
that? And-
taxes, that's all of that, but
okay.
minimum amount because it's a new construction. So
Okay.
25% is 54,000, right?
Indeed, it is.
Okay, so I'm going to minus 54,000 from 216,000.
So you're getting 162 is your NOI, 162.
So your net operating income is 162,000, right? So that's how after expenses, what I can take home, right? Now you're going to divide that by the cap rate of the area,
Mhm.
right? So for South LA, cap rate is normal around 5.5, right?
Mhm.
So I'm going to do a calculation here that says, what if I did 6%? What if I did 5.5%? And what if I did 5%? Okay. So 162 divided by 5%.
Okay.
Well, how much is that?
It is $3.24 million. So 3,240,000.
So best case scenario, I'm going to be able to sell my fourplex
Mm-hmm.
that's making $18,000 a month for 3.2 million,
Okay.
roughly. Okay.
Now
Now
that's
go 5.5.
okay. So let's see. So 162,000 times 0.05.
Divided by. I always
Yeah,
get
sorry.
this divided by
Sorry. Yeah, you're right.
5.5%.
Or 0.055, right? So you put in the calculator, you know how you move the little, they tell you in school, move the little decimal over. So 0.55. So now you're at 3.927 roughly. So
No, you did the calculations wrong. It's divided by 5.5%. You're at 2.9.
160,000 divided by
Yeah, 2.945. JJ's got it.
Oh,
So
there you go.
we were
Right.
at 3.2, 2.9, and now let's go 6%.
All right.
It's 2.7. Okay. So
Yeah.
I'm going to be able to sell this in a down market at 2.7 million. And in a decent market, I'm going to be able to sell it all the way up to 3.2 million. Right.
Cool. Yeah.
So that's my exit. Right. Now
Sure.
I build at $180 a square foot. My development costs are very low. I got to tell you, because I've been doing this for 8 years. I have figured out how to get my development costs as low as possible. And that is by controlling all of my materials, subcontracting as much as I can. That's with my with soft costs, right?
For sure.
So when we do that, what I do is I go, okay, for 4 units, off the top of my head, I believe we're at like 1.1 million to build 4 units, right? So if I'm at 1.1 million to build 4 units, right? 2.7 million, which was worst case scenario, minus 1.1 is what?
1.6.
So 1.6 million. So at 1.6 million, that tells me how much I can actually spend on acquisition, right? Depending on how much I want to make, right?
Yeah.
So if I can, again, like the property that we just did my example, if I can buy that for under 600,000 and clear $1 million in 2 years and 24 months, then I'm going to take that project down all day.
Imagine 500,000 a year. Crazy.
Right. Now, for me, that's a great one. That one's a grand slam, but typically it's a 300,000 plus range that I need to make for my business model for a development to make sense.
Okay.
And that's making 150,000 a year if I take 24 months. Now, I don't normally take 24 months. I usually take 12 to 18 months, but worst case scenario, I'm going to take 24 months. Then I'm going to spread out that profit, like you said, over 2 years.
Sure.
Yeah.
And see that? I need to do what you do.
There you go. Got the right lady here.
For sure. Thanks, guys.
That's the calculation. Thanks for asking, Miguel.
Thank you, Miguel. Looking forward to connecting with you later. Paul Hernandez out of Bakersfield. Paul, you're on with Sonia Ramirez. What's your question?
I don't have so much a question. You've just added so many layers to analyzing a market, an area, and thank you so much. This has been very, very helpful, and I'm really glad I'm here right now.
Oh, awesome, Paul.
And you have some YouTube videos, a site. So people
I
can
do actually.
check
If you
you out
look up,
more.
yeah, if you look up multi-unit queen, you'll see a lot of my offerings. I do raise private capital. So I have private money lending, and you guys are very familiar that are in the Gator, area of the creative financing aspect. I do private money raising capital. So a lot of my videos that you'll see are the opportunities that I'm presenting, but I always do a deal breakdown within those opportunities because, again, I think it's important for you guys to learn the reason why I'm taking a deal down if you're going to invest with me, right? And so I break down zoning and why I took this deal down and what I can build on it and how much it's going to cost me to build it. I break all that down in a webinar so that private money feels comfortable placing their money with me, right? So you are more than welcome to see those webinars because, again, I would hope that you have some value in it, whether you invest with me or not. So,
Felicia
All right.
Smith, you are on with Sonia. What's your question?
All right. Hi, Sonia.
hi,
This
Miss
is
Felicia.
this is very, very interesting. I have never heard this place this way before. And so my question is, you had mentioned about looking at Google. You said it's free, and you mentioned Crizzy and LoopNet. Would you spell those, please?
Yeah, Crexi is CREXI, and they're one and the same company. They're just two different branches of the same company. And the other one's
Okay.
LoopNet, LoopNet. So what you're going to see on those is commercial properties, and you're going to see big apartments, right? But
Mhm.
you're going to be able to see cap rates because when you're evaluating 5 units plus, they use cap rate and price per square foot more often than you do in the 4 units and under, right? Because
Okay.
4 units and under are considered residential. But when we are looking at underwriting the deal, we use the same metrics. So we also use price per square foot. We use cap rate. So it's a great place to look for those items.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Mr. Aiden Hector, you are on with Sonia Ramirez. What's your question?
Hi, Sonia. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, you mentioned that not only you're in construction, but you also raise private capital. I'm kind of interested in both of the. Oh, I'm currently in raising capital right now as we speak, but I'm very interested in new construction stuff, eventually becoming a developer. My question would be, where do you find like the most success raising capital, and specifically for construction or just in general? Like where, at least when you started out, like where did you find the most success in like, raising capital basically?
So I think you're going to find this interesting, Aiden, especially the people who've known me for the last 8 years doing this. I really just started raising capital in January. So interestingly enough, my ex-partner, my mentor that I had, he had a very, very high net circle of influence. And so I found the deal, I underwrote the deal, we took it down together, we built it together, but he always did the financing, right? And I never had to worry about that.
Like easy life, huh?
Right. And I was just like, great. And then last August, I decided to go on my own and start my own company and start doing my own developments. And all of a sudden it was like, do I want to do one project at a time or do I want to scale? Right. And I definitely wanted to scale. So when I decided I wanted to scale, it was like, well, now we need capital, right? Based on the experience that I have and based on the longevity that I have in the projects, I was able to leverage hard money, like a 9100 product, right? So most of the time I only have to come in with 10%, 10 or possibly 20% on ground up construction on my properties, right? So 10 to 20% in, 80 to 100 leverage on the either rehab or on the ground up, right? So the difference there is what I have to raise in private capital if I don't want to use my own capital. And when you use your own capital, you run out of capital very quickly, right? So again, that doesn't help you scale. So if I, answer your question, like I said, totally transparent, honestly, I started in January. I reached out to my network of people and said, hey, who has raised money, right? I never had to do this. I know my numbers really well, but I've never had to do it. And I reached out to a brother and sister team, AJ and Jean, that are part of like Relentless Investors. And I said, I saw them raise money. I'm going to reach out to them, right? I reached out to them and I said, what did you guys do? And they said, we did a webinar. right? And they were like, hey, if you want, we'll share the template with you. Great. I took that template and I put in my property details in it. And I was like, okay, I can do this. I know how to speak about my properties, right? And again, nobody kind of said, this is how you do it. I just went, they did a webinar, I'm going to do a webinar, right? And
right.
so then I posted my webinar on my social media and just said, hey, everybody who wants to learn about this opportunity, come and check this out. Now, I did do some research into what are people offering. They're offering it anywhere normally from 8 to 12% returns. So I knew that that's where I needed to be an attractive opportunity.
Right.
Right. And so I was like, okay, if people can make 7 or 8% in the stock market, why are they going to go with me? Right. And so I had to figure that part out as well. So is there enough meat on the property and on the project? First and foremost, what kind of returns can I offer? And I offer double-digit returns every time now because there is enough meat on my projects. And the benefit of private money is also most of the time, depending on the terms that you put, you can wait. They can wait until the end of a project to get paid, right? So I don't have that monthly payment that I have to make to them, right? So I started doing webinars, and again, my style was I want to teach and educate at the same time that I'm offering this opportunity. And that's how I'm going to stand out from anybody else that does this. So that's what I started doing. Now, in March of this year, I went to the Aspire event, which Pace was at. Actually, he was speaking there, right? And I went to the Aspire event and realized that there's a whole community called Money Is of people who are looking to move money. These are all people that are like, hey, I want opportunities to grow my money tax-free. And I was like, oh, I have opportunities. So yeah.
I got specifically about that group. Is it expensive? Because I know in sub 2, like the money is pretty. They ask pretty high returns in sub 2.
For the again, this is when you're talking about like Gator loans, right? I know it's anywhere usually from 15 to like 30%. Yeah. Right, from what I've seen, right? Because that's super short term.
Sometimes even 6 to 12-month loans, they ask for. It's just anyways. Sorry,
it can definitely get expensive, right? And it depends on where your need is, how much you're able to leverage. Because if you have very little experience and somebody's willing to bet on you, then the risk is on them, right? Because you have very little experience and they're going, hey, it's got to be worth it if I'm going to bet on you, right? If you have more experience, you can control terms a little bit better, right?
Right.
Like I said, I offer anywhere from 10 to 12%, either flat or annualized. And that seems to be super competitive for my community right now. And that's normally what I offer, right? But yeah, short term, I've taken on a Gator loan. I've taken on 2 Gator loans for 2 properties because then I needed EMD immediately. So on a $40,000 EMD, I offered 10% and they got that back in 6 weeks. I don't go crazy with the 20 and 30% because I'd rather, source it from a couple of different people than I have to have it from one. Right. So, there's definitely a place for Gator loans, like I said. And when the entry point is less, when the EMD is 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, then those bigger numbers start making more sense. When your EMDs are 40,000, 60,000, those numbers start making they don't make sense anymore, right? Because the deal doesn't have enough meat on it. But that's basically what I did, is that I refined my messaging. I refined my webinars, and now per project, I basically put out a webinar. It's the fastest way to reach more people. And the people who are interested, it goes back to attraction as opposed to chasing, right? The people who are attracted to my opportunity, they're calling me, they're DMing me, and they're saying, hey, I saw your video. I'm interested. How do I move forward with you? And the biggest thing that I do and that I tell people who are raising private money, if you're doing it for your own projects, make sure that you are papering people up, meaning that you are securing their funds. Because if you are asking people to bet on you, right, then you want to make sure your job is not only to grow their money, but to do it securely. Because we're doing it in real estate and it's backed by real estate, I do a promissory note and I do a deed of trust, backed by a deed of trust, and they're on my insurance. So if something were to happen, there was a fire at the property, something like that, they get paid out even before I do, right? So it goes back to making sure that you take that responsibility of taking someone's hard-earned money and making sure that you are as secure as possible with it and that you're not over leveraging properties. You don't want to borrow more than what the property is worth, right?
Right.
Only borrow what you need to get that property moving and to scale the rest of yours.
Cool. No,
Yeah.
thank you. That was really helpful. Thanks, Sonia.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Aiden.
Well, girl, you just dropped some bombs and gold nuggets all over the place. I saw people taking some notes and just great value, and I'm sure it's going to be well appreciated. I want to thank you so much for coming on today. I've got two last questions before we cut the recording. One, if people want to connect with you, what's the best way to get a hold of you? Is it your MySpace page or your TikTok, or what's the best way to reach you?
You know, I actually am trying to grow my TikTok because everything is visual, right? And it's one of the fastest growing platforms. So I'm trying to grow that as we speak. But primarily I use Instagram. So my socials are all at multi-unit queen. So you'll find me on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Instagram with at multi-unit queen. On TikTok, it's your realtor Sonia. So DMing me here or sending me a direct message, that's usually the best way to get a hold of me. Phone calls are hard, like I was telling people, because I'm on the phone a lot. So if I reject your call all of a sudden because I was on another call, sometimes I forget to call you back. So sending me a text or sending me a DM is the best way to get a hold of me.
Okay. And my last question for you is I have a networking group, and I always talk about the importance of networking. We touched on that a little bit earlier in the call. But, you know, there's so many platforms of education. Some are free, some have a dollar amount to them that have a Facebook group. They're bringing brand new investors every day. Some are experienced, some are very inexperienced, very new investors. They're often coming to social media, to these Facebook groups, to learn how to do a transaction, learn a process, learn a procedure. And people aren't always really leveraging social media for the networking purpose of building their community or building their network, building their brand. And you touched on it earlier. From your standpoint as an experienced investor, what is the importance of leveraging social media to network and build one's visibility?
It's invaluable at this point, right? Like I said, I don't even give out business cards anymore. I have people basically scan my QR code for my Instagram, and I just say, follow me on there. Because I always say that people will more than likely stumble across your socials, but they will not stumble across your internet page anymore, right? Even that has become more obsolete, right? It's still a nice way to lead people into something, but it's not the way that most people are going to find you. So whatever way that you decide to do social media, because it doesn't have to be putting your face out there, right? I enjoy it. I completely love, being in front of the camera. That's the reason that I've taken the stance of like a personal branding aspect, and I document everything I do. You guys know where I'm eating. You guys know where I'm at. So I have definitely taken the stance of a personal brand, but I encourage you that if you're not comfortable being on camera, that's okay, that you document this day-to-day things that you're doing. You document you on a computer, your computer screen of what I'm doing, looking up properties, that you document a property that you're flipping, that you document the conversations possibly that you're having with people, right? With their permission. So there's always opportunities, do voiceovers, do the things that you have to do if you're not comfortable being on camera. And another thing is that you want to practice. So even if you do a video of yourself every single day and you never post it, that's okay. You need to practice and start getting comfortable with it, right? Because some people go, I don't like my voice. I think I stumble across my words. I think all the things that happen, and you don't get better overnight. You get better by repeatedly doing something and with practicing. And this is why it's so important to be groups like JJ's, because you can practice in a safe environment, basically, right? There's no judgment. Everybody else is here for the same reason that you are, right? People always say, what if I say the wrong things? Well, who knows what you were supposed to say?
Yeah.
Nobody knows what you were supposed to say. Only you know if it was wrong or not. So don't worry about what other people think. Worry about what is your end goal. And always go into any group with an intention of connecting on some level for a reason, instead of just, I'm going to come and see if I can talk to two people. No. I have an intention that I want to connect with somebody and learn about a deal. I have an intention that I want to be of service because I know how to do a transaction coordination service. There's always got to be an intention behind it, even if it's just learning, because the universe, God will put it in your way. Okay. So every time that you actually put it out there of the energy of what you're looking for, you're going to start getting shown that. So social media is the same way. We have to put ourselves out there. Like I said, if you're in this business, people need to know what you're doing.
Mhm.
So even if you create another page that's not your personal page, that's just for business, that's fine. But people need to know what you're doing. You can't quietly do real estate, right? So you need to be out there and showcasing what you're looking for, the opportunities. And like I said, if you choose to yourself, like I said, I put everything out there. So I'm a little bit different than some other people.
Yeah, and that goes hand in hand with one of the things I like to say is you don't market your business, you market yourself. If one is not visible, your invisible opportunity walks right past you.
Yeah.
And
I mean, big brands like you have Nike and, big brands, people follow big brands, right? But until you are one of those big brands, they're going to follow you. And that's the reality, right? So like I said, even if it's just your voice in a voiceover, even if it's the style of the way that you're doing things, that is how they're starting to identify you. And it's okay if it's not you personally, like I said, but it is going to be your personality infused into whatever social media channel you choose to go on to.
there you go. Hey, well, thank you so much. If you guys are watching on YouTube right now, please like Sonia's video. Please put your comments in there, what your takeaways are, what was the most valuable. She had dropped so many gold nuggets. If there's ways that you think I can improve what I'm doing, please put that in the comments of the YouTube video. If you guys are on the call right now, please message Sonia at the Multi-Unit Queen. Everyone on the call, please message her on Instagram. Let's support her. Let's continue to follow her. And if you guys want to connect with me, the QR code here allows you to register for my group. It takes you to my website. There's a pulsating register now button. My Instagram is over here. It's JJ Azizian, jj.azizian. But more importantly, let's, follow Sonia, support Sonia, see what she's doing, participate in her events, and look for more videos coming up on Flips Up with JJ, and hopefully we'll bring you some great content. If you guys are on the call right now, don't go away. We're going to do some breakout rooms and some live networking. And Sonia, for everybody else that's following us on social media, we'll see them out in the virtual world of networking, right?
Yeah, we'll see you at a live event soon, guys. Like I said, keep looking at those socials, watch the Facebook group, see where everybody's going to be at, connect live and in person, and don't be afraid to put yourselves out there. And remember, the more you interact with posts and with videos and with all those things, your social, how do I say it? Your social capital goes up, right?
Yeah.
So you want to make sure your social currency goes up every time you interact with somebody or with the post or a video. So make sure that you're interacting, even if it's emojis or it's a comment.
Guys, you hear it from the Multi-Unit Queen herself. So be visible, do videos, post, engage. And remember, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook, the more active, the more you participate, the more these platforms promote yourself.
Yeah.
So again, thank you, everybody. Please stick around if you're on the call. If you're on watch on YouTube, again, thank you so much, and look for more coming up from Sonia Ramirez, the Multi-Unit Queen, and myself, of course, JJ Azizian. Thank you, guys. See you
Thanks,
soon.
guys.